There's a strange incongruity, contradiction that occurs when one first starts to practice the Dharma. On one hand, we're told that we need to practice non-attachment. We need to learn how to let go of what I would call worldly things. That it's our holding on to things that cause the problems. If we could just hold them with empty hands, everything would be okay. That's why we spend hours upon hours sitting on the cushion without moving, without speaking, so that we can train both our minds and our bodies not to grab after every thought, after every inclination that comes into our head. On the flip side, we're told to have rather strong attachments to anything associated with the Dharma. One of the first things you learn in the temple is how to bow, and you bow to literally everything. You bow when you enter the meditation hall. You bow to your cushion before you sit. You bow again when you get off the cushion. You prostrate yourself before the Buddha, before the Bodhisattvas, before the ancestors. Bowing, bowing, bowing. So many sacred objects. So many, in fact, that any book, any scripture associated with the Dharma, the Lalita Vistara Sutra, the Uttara Tantra Sutra, the Abhidharma Samuccaya, these texts are sacred. So much so that you're not allowed to put them on the floor. They go on the table, they go on shelves, or if you absolutely have to put a Dharma book on the floor, you put a towel or a handkerchief down underneath it. What's the big deal? Now, I think part of all of this comes from just a sort of functional practicality and tradition. When people first started practicing Buddhism 2,500 years ago, any written word, any book, any scroll was very hard to come by. Dharma books were especially difficult to find, so much so that when Zen Master Dogen wanted to study the Dharma, he had to go to China by boat, copy the scriptures down by hand, hundreds upon hundreds of pages, and then he had to take those scriptures back to Japan with him. So I think part of this protocol is simply, hey, this was really hard to get. We don't know if we can get another copy. Please be careful. But there's another aspect as well, this sort of obsession that Buddhists have with the sacred, and that's because it is formative training. We in the West live in a consumer culture. We don't take care of things. We buy them, we use them up, we throw them away, we buy something new. In fact, due to planned obsolescence, lots of things are built so that we have to throw them away eventually. Farmers aren't allowed to repair their equipment. Hookup culture says that we can ghost people if we don't find them attractive. Nothing is sacred. So part of the formation, part of the training of the Buddha Dharma is to learn sacredness, to learn to treat things and people with respect. It starts with ourselves. There's a reason that we spend so much time cleaning in the Buddhist temple. We have to make the bed, we have to sweep the floor, we have to wash the dishes. And in our heads, we're wondering, what does this have to do with Buddhism? When do we get to the good stuff? But if we understand that life is sacred, in the same way that a Dharma book or a Buddha statue or a meditation cushion is sacred, then we understand we must take care of life, including our life, in the same way that we would care for anything else. No one's going to come and scream at you and shake their fist if the dishes aren't washed, but your life is important. And because it's important, because you have the seed of enlightenment inside of you, and that makes you sacred, as a sacred object, washing the dishes is a way to care, to show respect for the enlightenment that lives within you. Same with making the bed, same with sweeping the floor. First, we learn the Buddha Dharma is sacred. Then we learn that we are sacred. And finally, and this, in my experience, is the truly hard part, we learn that others are also sacred. And given a lot of what's happening in the news right now, I think many people have forgotten that fact. They have forgotten that human life is sacred. So what are we as Buddhists to do in such a world, in such a situation? Well, we take the training we learn in the temple and we take it outside the temple. Through our actions, we pay respect and we acknowledge the sacredness of human life, both in ourselves and in others. Now, this doesn't mean that we need to literally bow and prostrate ourselves to everyone we meet. Though, if you read the sutras, there were monks who were given that task. Maybe they were hard learners. But this could be as simple as using right speech, one of the Noble Eightfold Paths. Or I should say, a tenet of the Noble Eightfold Path. Saying please, saying thank you. Trying to use a calm tone, even when we don't necessarily want to. We could practice right action. Holding the door for others when we enter a building. Letting people cut in front of us in the grocery line. Now, again, obviously, no one's going to write us a check for $1 million. We're not going to create world peace by doing things like what I've mentioned. But what we will do is acknowledge the sacredness of human life. And in the same way that we train ourselves through our meditation, through our prostration, through our sutra study, to see the beauty of human life in ourselves, through the practice of treating others well, we will also learn to treat ourselves well. And thus, like everything in Buddhism, it becomes a very healthy, very life-affirming circle. If everything is sacred, if the bag filled with cotton that we sit on is sacred, if the statue made of plastic or wood is sacred, if the books made of type paper are sacred, then so is every human being. And as Buddhists, we must acknowledge that fact, even if others don't. Amitabha.